Wars, assassinations and occupation. Israel's history has been dominated by violence. To the outside world, Israelis tend to present a unified front, obsessed with foreign threats. But do the country's growing internal divisions over race, religion and the economy pose a bigger challenge to its future? Hello and welcome to The Cafe. I'm Mehdi Hassan. This week we're in Tel Aviv, the relaxed, cosmopolitan and financial heart of Israel. Last summer, almost 500,000 Israelis took to the streets to protest against massive inequality. It was the biggest wave of demonstrations in the country's history. Just a few weeks ago, a man named Moshe Suleiman came to a protest here in Tel Aviv and set himself on fire. He burned to death. Israel, some say, is on the verge of its own Arab Spring, its own social revolution. Meanwhile, the occupation of the Palestinian territories continues, and the divide between secular and ultra-Orthodox Jews intensifies. Israel has long prided itself on being a secular, democratic and Jewish state. But how long can it continue to credibly make such a claim? Let's find out inside the cafe. Joining us in the cafe today, Ronen Shoval is the founder of a conservative movement that works to strengthen Zionism in Israel. He believes that Israel should remain a Jewish majority state at all costs. Shlomo Zand is a history professor at Tel Aviv University and author of The Invention of the Jewish People. He believes that the state of Israel should define itself as Israeli, not Jewish. Stav Shafir is co-founder of the Israeli social justice movement. She thinks that Israel has long been a divided society. Boaz Noll is a leader of a secular group campaigning to include ultra-Orthodox Jews and Palestinian Israelis in the military draft. Oded Ravivi is the mayor of Efrat, an Israeli settlement in the occupied West Bank. He says the settlements are a legitimate part of Israel. Hanin Zoabi was the first Palestinian woman to be elected as a member of Israel's parliament, the Knesset. She believes Israel is an apartheid state. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining me here in the cafe in Tel Aviv. Normally, when foreign journalists come to Israel, they end up discussing the peace process, Israel's role in the region, all of those foreign policy issues. I'm much more interested in the domestic scene, some of the internal debates and divisions that seem to be going on here. Because to the outsider, and I speak as an outsider here in your city, Israel comes across as a strong, patriotic, unified society. And so to kick us off today, I want to ask all of you, is Israel a unified society, Ronen?
You might not see it around this table, but definitely yes. Definitely the people of Israel are very much patriotic, very much love their country. And you will see around these people a lot of people who really, really care. And I think it's also something which represents the state of Israel and a lot of the population in Israel, that all of us really, really care about the situation. Whether we agree or disagree, we all care.
And do you think there are dividing lines in society that have appeared in recent years that perhaps weren't there several years ago?
And they are part of the Israeli society who are trying to break this unity around the country. But we need to understand this is only a small percentage of the society and doesn't really represent the majority of the people in Israel.
Stav, is Israel a divided society, do you think, today?
It's definitely a divided society. I think that for many, many years, for a few decades, it was a divided society, very much split with a lot of inner and internal conflicts, a conflict between the Jews and the Arabs, a conflict between the ultra-Orthodox and the secular community, between Mizrahi and Ashkenazi, those who immigrated to Israel from the West and those who immigrated from the East, and many other conflicts. And during the social protest movement from the beginning in last July, something happened. For the first time, Israelis looked at each other and said, okay, it's about time that we start to get along. It's about time that we start to think what Israel is, where we want it to go, how we want to define it.
No, it was. I think that the social protest movement last year proved more than anything how the political debate in Israel and the political leadership in Israel is almost not relevant to what is really going on in the Israeli society. So while there is a political debate They still call us names and divide us. Right wing, left wing, ultra-Orthodox, semi-Orthodox, secular, religious, Ashkenaz, Sephardi. Basically on the main principle of where we're heading and what needs to happen here, there's a huge consensus. The common ground between us is much, much, much bigger. The consensus between us is much bigger than what they make it. Unfortunately, the political debate...
I completely agreed with Shoval with one correction. I think that the Israeli Jewish society is less divided than the Greek society, the Italian society, or the French society today, or even the American society. But it's only between the Jewish, 80% of the population in Israel,
Everyone
and not the 20%.
That we have 18% Palestinians here.
There is a kind of division, a very, very strong and deep division within the 80% that the Israeli society, with all these social protests, for the moment, I don't know what will happen tomorrow, it's less divided than the French society today.
Well, you mentioned the Palestinians.
So
Let me ask
as you see,
Hanin.
Mahdi, we are totally excluded from the discussion, as we
Absolutely,
totally excluded from the Palestinian society. Actually, we are talking about two states for two nations inside Israel. There is the state of Israel for the Jewish citizens, for them, and there is another racist state for the 18% of the society for the Palestinians. They can continue going on in the discussion without even mentioning the word Palestinian, without even mentioning the word
let me
Arabs.
ask you this, Hanin.
They can, as they did for 63 years, they are now talking about justice, while Israel has confiscated the Palestinian land 85% before the protest, during the 50s and the 60s.
This is what I want to ask you. Has it got worse, Hanin? This is my question.
Yeah, of course.
Do you think the divide is bigger? You're saying it's a divide been there for 63 years.
First of all, there is one main division between Jewish citizens and Palestinian citizens. And I am not an internal issue, an internal Israeli issue. I am part of my people. I am part of the Palestinian people, and I am a citizen. I want full citizenship. Here around the table, most of them don't even understand what's the meaning of full citizenship. The Knesset has passed more than 30 racist laws inside the Knesset.
Hanin,
So the issue, the big issue is to Judaize the land, to steal my homeland, land, and to oppress my identity. You are speaking about the Israeli society, and you are speaking
Hanin,
about the division.
let me bring in Oded, who's sitting waiting in the corner, to answer my original question. Do you see Israeli society as a divided society? What's your take?
I think the fact you gave me the opportunity to answer last just proved how united the people around this table are, and maybe Hanin doesn't see the great values in which she's living in. The fact that she is the member of the House of Representatives in Israel, that she has full rights to legislate legislations, and she gets full representation of the people who voted her in to the House of
Which mean
Representatives.
nothing.
If it doesn't mean
we'll come
anything,
back to these
Hanin, to you,
topics.
so you can give it up and go to somewhere else where you think that you'll
This
be
is
more
my
represented.
homeland. You will not say to me, if you don't recognize my right in my homeland,
More
you
of
can
it.
go.
More
you
of it
can
is
go
much
out.
more important.
You can go
Arab in Israel, full citizens of Israel, is not living in Israel like a Jew is living in New York. You have to understand that the state defines itself as a Jewish state, not as an Israeli
Shlomo,
state.
that's a very good point. I want to bring in Stav. I'll come back to you.
Israel has 80% Jews and almost 20% Arabs, Arab Palestinians. And I think we all live here. I was born here, you were born here. If we want to live together, we have to fight for it together.
Big issue in Israel. I want to ask you about a man named Moshe Suleiman, who a few weeks ago walked into a street in Tel Aviv, came from Haifa and set himself on fire. Explain to our viewers why he did that.
Well, I can't explain, Moshe. I just came back from his funeral. And Moshe left a letter that blames the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance and the country, the state, to commit a suicide as a way of a struggle is not the right thing to do. That's a horrible thing.
But you're one of the organizers of these social protests.
I think, however, that it symbolizes the suffering in Israel, about what happens to people, the result of poverty, the activists and people all around this country who know that there are solutions, that there are things that can be done in order to increase social mobility, in order to decrease socioeconomic gaps, things that can be done in order to save this country.
The Prime Minister
and are
said it
not
was a
being done
personal
today.
tragedy. And a lot of people got upset with that response. Did you?
Prime Minister is responsible, and the Minister of Finance, and many Prime Ministers before, it's not only him, are responsible for Israel's socioeconomic situation, are responsible for our socioeconomic issues.
If this country, someone tried to set himself on fire on a daily basis in the recent week, The Prime Minister needs to ask himself some questions. What led to this situation and who's in charge?
Do you think the economic and social system has a responsibility as well?
I think that we have a problem in the economic system, but I do think that the solution is exactly 180% what Stav thinks about the solution, because she believes that we need to have more socialist economy in order to make the
More
gaps.
spending, more redistribution.
Definitely.
You don't.
And I believe that in order to have social justice, we need to break down the fact that the way of the capitalism system in Israel is too much struggle and too much, the economy is not really an open economy enough.
Okay, now Shlomo,
It's
well
helped
done.
me a lot when I heard that he defined the suicide of this man as a personal act, because it was a social political act. He declared it. It was a part of something, and I'm afraid that it will continue to be. Now, the Israeli society started a kind of voyage, if you want, to a kind of division that I hope that will become more and more deep. Because in Israel, I'm afraid that this condition will create something that we couldn't go back. If I spoke before that it was between the 80% of the Jews a kind of consensus, I think that we are maybe before the break of this consensus.
When you listen to Shlomo saying we're on the verge of breaking this consensus, some people have referred to Mr. Suleiman as Israel's Bouazizi, the man who's on the verge of a social revolution. Do you think that? Is that how you see things?
I think it's far from that. I think the representatives around the table are trying to give more public support to what we actually know that the protest actually had. It's not saying that some of the cause of the protests are not legitimate.
400,000 people took to the streets, the biggest protest in the history of Israel.
400,000 people. You have to ask yourself what was behind the 400,000 people.
Guys,
Why did it not
guys.
succeed to carry on to anything more successful
What was behind
and more
it?
challenging?
But you would accept on the narrow point that Shlomo made that the settlements do very well out of the state, don't
No,
they?
I don't agree. I think his accusation is completely false. It's been
you don't
proven.
get
For
You don't get
example, what
funding.
happened with
It's
the
been
Ariel
proven-
University.
it's been
Take, for
proven
example, the
that the
50
facts and
million.
accusations-
Did you see how much the difference between the money that is giving to the colonies in the occupied territories and the money that is giving?
Stop lying. That's a lie.
Okay, I'm a liar.
Yeah,
When you
that's-
have the
that's-
facts, when you
You
have the
can
facts and
compare.
I
You can compare it.
There was
You can.
no-
You
no
are living in a
basis.
welfare state in the occupied territory. You are not living in Israel. Why? Why you
Where
are
do
not
you
a
live,
part?
Shlomo?
Sorry.
Where do you live?
I live in the state of Israel.
Yeah, who decided at the border that where you're living is...
All the world is recognizing the
International law? What
67
about
borders.
international law?
Nobody in the
He
world.
doesn't recognize international
even
law.
the,
He
sorry,
either doesn't
even the
recognize
Arab League in
international law.
2002 recognized my right to live in the 67 borders of Israel. Nobody is not recognizing. I'm living in a state, juridically, I'm living in the state of Israel. You are not living in Israel.
Until Khanin will say that you're also living in occupied territories.
We are the only
only a matter
state
of
in the
time.
world that the Minister of the Foreign Affairs
Shlomo,
is
you've
living
raised-
outside the state.
Oded, I want to ask you a question. You say the settlements are part of Israel. You don't accept Shlomo's distinction. Would you accept one state for everyone as a price worth paying to keep your settlement in the West Bank?
I would not like to see myself living in a country which doesn't have a majority of Jewish people. But, okay, the suggestion that Khanin keeps on repeating of a two-state solution was introduced the first time in 1927, was repeated in 1947, and rejected time after time.
Are you a
by the
supporter?
Arabs.
I'm asking you what you support.
I support a compromise which will define my rights as living in a Jewish state, as opposed to what Shlomo says that it is an Israeli state. We only have one Jewish state around the world.
And then a Palestinian state.
And a Palestinian state. If they decide that they want to have their own independence, be my
Which
guest.
is where?
The-
If
the
you hear
problem is-
a settler telling you that he's for a two-state solution, that means that we have reached somewhere. And that's exactly the thing.
No, but he doesn't
the,
believe
the
and
political
agree. Two-state
debate
solution.
in Israel, unfortunately, instead of being held by mainstream Israel, which is 80% of Israeli society that basically agree that two-state solution is the only solution and everybody knows exactly what it's going to be like. There's no one person who actually...
I'll come to you in one moment.
that
Hanin's been
that
waiting.
it's
She'll
gonna
start.
stay there.
Hanin.
We don't
Now,
want it.
80% of the Israeli society does not agree with two-state solution. They don't agree with dismantling settlements. They don't agree to withdraw from 67 portals. They don't agree to withdraw from
Do you agree?
East Jerusalem. So
Do you
it
agree
is
to two-state
amazing
solution?
That the
Do you
Israeli
agree to two-state
society
solution?
agree-
Not
two democratic states, yes.
Majority,
Even
that's
you
what
don't agree to dismantle the settlements. Do you agree to dismantle all the settlements 67 and withdraw from East Jerusalem and the right of return to the refugees? Do you agree? This
The
is
solution
do you
is
agree?
there.
You don't.
The solution.
It's less than 10% of the Israeli society who agrees with the right of return and
Well, let me ask Ronan. You said, do you believe in a Jewish state? She's not Jewish. Why should she believe in a Jewish state?
If I would live in Britain, I would accept the idea that Britain is not a Jewish state.
It's not defined by race or religion. Being British is not defined by race or... I'm British and I'm brown and Muslim.
If you look at most of the countries around the world,
Yeah,
you have a lot of Muslim countries,
yeah.
dozens of Muslim countries. You have a lot of Christian countries. You have even Lutheran countries as German, and you have other as Catholic countries, as Italy, and so on and so on. You have only few countries who are mixed countries, as you can say, the United States or French, which is based on
Yeah.
different system. We have only one Jewish
We
state.
are not talking
This
about
is
majority.
done.
Is she a foreigner?
Yeah.
She's a foreigner
Yeah.
in her own land.
Yeah.
Is that your view?
Israel is a Jewish state. It will always be a Jewish state.
But I'm just wondering-
And I don't need Hanin Zoabi approval
You
to decide
need
whether
me
I'm Jewish
because
or
Is
I
she a
am
foreigner?
indigenous
So I'm just
people.
wondering if she's a foreigner. I'm interested in this.
Because
Ronan.
she just
Ronan
said
says she's a foreigner.
she just said
Here she's an equal
So I'm
citizen like me.
indigenous people.
She is a citizen of
So this is my
Israel.
homeland, and by Jewish
Arabs
state you are
is
excluding me
minority.
from the resources,
Hold on, Hanin,
from my
Ronan,
relations
finish
to
his
my
point.
homeland.
From my point of view, Arab
He
is a
said I'm a
minority.
foreigner. He
Arab
said-
is a minorities in
Stranger,
Israel
he
have
said.
the all civil right. From the first one to the last one, they have the whole civil right. The only thing they don't have is a national right. As I don't have a national right in other countries. If she wants to have a national right, she have other
I will
a lot of
answer in one
a lot of.
Okay, hold on, Hanin, I will come to
say
you.
if this is my homeland
I will
or
come
not.
to you in a second.
You immigrate
Shlomo is
to
waiting,
here.
saying.
You immigrate. I am indigenous
I'm
people.
seven
I didn't
generation here. I
immigrate.
didn't
This is my homeland.
Okay,
I
you
don't
said
want
that.
your
You need to respect-
recognition.
you need to
I will
respect that this is a
struggle
Jewish
for
state.
democracy.
This
If
is
you
a
don't
Jewish
like,
state.
you can go back.
Shlomo, no interruptions.
One of the things that most people in Israel, and even outside, especially in the United States, cannot understand that the Israeli state, when defining itself as a Jewish state, is exactly to define United States as an Anglo-Saxon Protestant state, or to define
This is UN
France
decision.
as a Gallo-Catholic
UN
state.
decision.
I think that
Jewish state, UN
I
decision.
want that Israel will define itself as an Israeli state, not as a Jewish state, because Jewishness doesn't cover all the citizens that are living
Okay,
beside
so you made
me.
that very...
No, one moment.
Okay, very briefly. We're going to bring in other people.
When the socio-economic protest started, and I remember the first cry was, the people want a social justice. And I asked myself, what is the people? Woody Allen belongs to the people that are living here, or she is belonging to my people? By living here, by speaking Hebrew like me, she's a part of the protest. Maybe this new division of the Israeli society will create some new solidarity between Boaz and Hanin. Israeli cannot be democratic and Jewish in the same time.
We will come back to that in a moment. Can there be social justice in Israel, from your perspective, as someone who's campaigning, when it's only for one people and not all the people?
Most of the people around this table really represent the old politics of Israel, the politics of fear. And they have a good reason, and I completely understand your pain on every point. They have a good reason. For many years, Israel was based on fear. Our politics was based on fear. Nobody talks about hope in Israel. Until last year, until the social protest began, there was no such thing as hope. And what happened here, and what some people here don't understand, is that we're not there anymore. Today, Israelis, Jews and Arabs, understand that we need a solution, that Israel is stuck. It's stuck economically, it's stuck politically, it's stuck. And it needs a solution, and it needs it now, as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, we have to talk, not to fight with each other, but to actually talk and create a conversation.
So what's to disagree with in what Stav is saying, when you hear what Stav is saying?
First of all, the social conflict and the social crisis in Israel didn't start in the last few years. The social resistance, all the social demonstration are without a political context. They want to ignore and to avoid the political basis of this social crisis. And what is the political basis? It's the policies of occupation in Israel.
Boaz.
This dialogue here is exactly what you're seeing, and that's exactly the reason why we have not reached an agreement with the Palestinians so far.
Oh, I've worked that out tonight, why you haven't reached
it's
any
not
agreements in
mentality,
Israel, don't worry.
because it's the same thing where both sides Look at Khalid Zoabi. The first thing she starts throwing up is blaming and blaming and blaming. And let's go back to 1948 and 1967 and 19
Yes.
and let's go back to the
This
history.
is not
And
for
here you have a
history.
new generation
This is the
that tells
basis.
you, let's talk about the future.
But do you believe-
Let's
do you-
talk about
Boaz, do you-
one
Without
society.
justice?
Let's talk about
Future
justice.
without justice.
No, vice
Future,
versa.
you want future
But
without justice.
You
You want
choose
coexistence
to keep
without justice.
blaming
Me.
everything that
Support
happens.
our struggle.
Everything that happens.
Are you
in both of
supporting
our,
discrimination?
in both of our nations' life so far is 50% my fault and 50% your fault.
No.
Now, if you want, no wait.
No, this
if you
is
want to
not
keep
true.
digging, if you want to keep digging on what happened to our fathers
You're
and
just
grandmothers
talking
and
about
grandmothers,
coexistence. You
or
are
you want to
doing
talk about
nothing.
our children,
Let me, hold
then
on,
you
Hani,
have
let me,
opportunity.
Boaz,
Then you can do it.
Boaz, let me ask you a
Because
question.
that's exactly what she represents.
You're a supporter of the social movements.
Absolutely.
You think it's a good thing. So let me ask a question on Stavzi. Do you believe that that social movement that started last summer that we've seen more of recently can incorporate the demands, the aspirations for justice of all Israelis, Palestinians and Jews? Because Hanin thinks it can't.
Khalid Zoabi, who got elected by Israeli citizen voters, that at the end of the day, what they most care about is their electricity and is their education for their kids and is their daily life.
Which
Same
the state of
worries
Israel
that I
denies
have.
them.
Same
Denies
worries that
them.
I have. But Khalid Zoabi
Do you
chose.
agree?
But Khalid Zoabi chose, instead of talking about her kids' education and water and infrastructure, to talk about settlements
I am
and 50 years
struggling.
ago
Yes, I will
and all that.
struggle
And
against
that's
occupation and for
that's
my
the missing
people
opportunity
rights. You don't
that we
decide
are
my
talking here
agenda.
about life.
Do you accept, however, that the problem of and correct me if I'm wrong, but the problem of a Palestinian who's living in an unrecognized village in Israel is different to the problem of someone living in Tel Aviv trying to find a cheaper apartment?
Absolutely, I think it's 100% the responsibility.
But it can all come under one umbrella, one struggle.
Of the Israeli
participate
government
in
to
demonstrations
bring
for,
equal
the refugees?
rights and equal
For
duties.
unrecognized-
What's interesting is you guys are arguing here amongst yourselves. Ronan's sitting here saying, well, the villages are unrecognized. They're illegal villages. So do you have that debate? We know Hanin's view on that. Do you have the debate with Ronan to say, no, I'm with Hanin, not with you?
This is not how it works. What happened here, the social protest, it began because of a very small and minor issue, because of the problem of housing, affordable housing
Yes.
in Israel, very limited, very small. When so many people joined and hundreds of thousands of people started to march together and talk about many other issues, we understood that it's not about housing, that housing is a symbol. It's about a home and what home is.
So would you accept the idea of having another 50,000 houses in Ariel in order to solve the housing problem?
This is not about affordable housing. Affordable housing is about where people actually live. It's not about
the question-
transferring
so you
people
said-
from one
He
place
asked
to
a very-
another.
he asked a simple
It's about
question.
helping them
No,
to
no, no,
get
hold on,
their
he
roof
asked-
over their
he asked-
heads
yes or no, he
wherever
asked a
they
very
live.
simple
Yes,
question.
so
Do
this
you
will
support
solve
that
the
or not?
problem? Are you for it
Then
or
you're
against it?
taking it again to the old discourse.
Shlomo.
The question is if the social protest will be an intergroup Jewish moral questions or it will be a little bit more universal.
It is already
Now,
universal.
when he Boaz repeat a Jewish state, a Jewish state, a Jewish state, it means that one thing important in all the fights. The question for me, if these fights, if Stav and Boaz will understand that to fight for justice cannot be an intergroup moral Jewish question, it has to be an Israeli question, a Middle East question, and maybe will change our situation.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back in part 2. It's pretty heated here in Tel Aviv. Join me as we continue this discussion. Welcome back to the cafe in Tel Aviv. We're having, I think you could call it a lively discussion here about some of the arguments and debates that are going on here in Israel. I want to carry on the discussion by picking up a point that Ronen made in part 1, which was that this is a Jewish state and those people who don't like it have to accept that point. And I want to ask a question, which is, can a state be Jewish and secular and democratic all at the same time? Is that possible?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. The idea of a Jewish state was recognized by the UN. The decision of creating the state of Israel was the creating of a Jewish state. Now, what does it mean, a Jewish state? Jewish state doesn't mean that other people don't have right. It is a Jewish state with a democratic regime. the Jewish status of the country is being achieved by the majority of Jewish. That's the only thing that it's being Jewish with. Okay, if we have a majority
So as long
of
as you
Jewish,
have a demographic majority, you're a Jewish state. What if you lose that majority?
well, it won't be a Jewish state.
And you'll accept that happily?
I won't accept it. I will fight with all my life.
Well, you can't fight. You can only have more babies. There's nothing else you can do.
I'm doing my best, believe me.
Okay, but Shlomo, you're listening to Ronan. What's your response?
It's very important to understand.
This is the UN mandate.
I have to, yeah, but it was in 47 when there is not an Israeli state and not an Israeli society, a real Israeli society. The choice that they make in 47 was a Jewish and Arab seeker. Even Palestinian didn't exist as as an identity. We are in 2012, an Israeli state. I insist of the fact that you cannot define these states as a Jewish state and to continue to be a democratic state. You can be a little bit more, a little bit less liberal. But democratic state says that the state belongs to all the citizens that live there. If, he wants a kind of hegemony, cultural hegemony, Israeli on the state, I can understand him. But insisting of the fact that this is a Jewish state, it means one thing. These states belong to Woody Allen, to Greenspan in New York, much more to the person that is sitting with me.
Ronan.
He represents, or he grasped Judaism as a religious, where Judaism is not religious, it's a nationhood. Like British people have their own state, like German people have their own state, like Italian people have their own state, like Poland people have their own state. Also Jews have their own state because Judaism is not a religious, it's a peoplehood. That's the main idea.
His grandparents is not British, he's a British. She's Israeli, she's not a Jew.
Okay, Shlomo, you've said, let Hanin speak first.
Ronan is right, because he is just deleting me. Because he is doesn't recognize that there are Palestinian people inside Israel. So he is right. He doesn't see us. The schools in the Jewish cities and towns even doesn't study that there were Palestinians before the existence of Israel, and that the Palestinians will continue after the establishment of Israel. The UN didn't say to expel 85% of the Palestinians from their homeland. The UN talked about 50% of the land, and Israel has controlled 78% of the land. So the establishment of Israel was not by the UN solution.
Let me ask you a question.
Was a violation.
We're not getting into a history debate about 1947.
No.
Let me ask a question based on what Ronan said. He says you have full political and civil rights. You're equal to anyone else. Is that true? Is that true?
I am a member of the parliament, which
let her speak. She can speak for herself.
Which at the same time, the same parliament can pass 33 racist laws
we will change the government. But you are still a member of the parliament.
It is not the government.
You are still part of this society, and you get your rights.
I am a minority, and the parliament as you said, I'm a parliament of a Jewish state. I must Judaize the land. I must, as he said, I must keep Jewish majority.
Your own
I must give privileges to the Jews.
Boaz, do you believe that Jews and Palestinians in Israel have equal rights and are totally treated equally in front of the law?
Unfortunately not, but that is our fault and we must change it. We must take responsibility for that.
And to answer my question to Ronan,
a
can you have a Jewish, democratic and secular state? You believe you can have all three things?
She is the proof that we can be a Jewish state with a Palestinian member of the Knesset.
Against me.
She are the proof
that you are not
this is a Jewish state with a song.
Me
I studied Arabic at school because I have a minority that has equal rights.
You are very arrogant to say that there is a democracy here and I am part of the Knesset. I give up my candidacy in the Knesset. Return back to me my land. Return my land to me.
Not only this, 80% of the land of Israel cannot be sold to non-Jewish. Do you know it?
Oded, you're someone who is a settler. A lot of people say that you shouldn't be living in settlements. Do you believe in a Jewish, democratic, secular state?
Definitely yes. I think the way Hanin is talking is a proof to that fact. I think the disrespect that she has to the House of Representatives, which she is a member of, and the laws which are being passed in it in a democratic way, where the majority decides. I think the fact that she is talking so freely in the middle of Tel Aviv, without anybody stopping her.
But what about the law she cited?
Thank you.
Let's take a specific fact.
I think the state of Israel is proud to have, first of all, a House of Representatives that pass laws according to majority. And second of all, it has a court, a Supreme Court, which goes and examines every single law, whether it is right or not, whether it is apartheid law or not, or whether it is discriminating or not.
Yeah.
And not many countries can be proud of such a legal system that protects its own citizens from the legislator. Now, the fact that Khanin doesn't respect any of these rights that she has.
Of course, I don't respect apartheid. I don't respect
apartheid.
oppression.
There's no apartheid.
You are
Living beside an
stealing
apartheid.
the land of the
Shlomo, you can shout as
Palestinians.
well that I'm living it as apartheid. At the end of the day, you're talking slogans without saying what the facts are. Yes, because at the end of the
Your
day,
neighbors in the near the settlement has political, civic rights? Answer me.
in Judea and Samaria, 4% of the land is occupied in the West Bank is occupied by Jews. 96% of the land is occupied by Palestinians who have their own government and their own civil rights.
But they're under occupation under international law. But that's for
the only thing
the
which
United Nations disagrees with you.
the only thing which keeps them apart from having full independence is the fact that they don't have a right to establish an army. Other than that, they run their lives from day one until night.
When we talk about a Jewish state, and we used to talk about a new generation of people protesting, what about the old divisions? You mentioned it earlier, between different types of Jews, between those who have come from abroad, those who are born here, between secular and religious.
This is the complexity of Israel. What we have to deal with is multiple complexities. The complexity of the Jewish Israelis who had to escape terror abroad and came to this place to build a home, and the complexity of the Palestinian people.
This is a past
And
discourse.
it's a past, everything is a past discourse. And that's the trouble. And for so many years, we just increased all of those gaps. Of course, the divisions exist.
Not enough.
And they are maintained by the
Well, what about-
socioeconomic policy.
What about this debate that's going on right now in Israel, which has led to the fall of a government, which is about what you do about ultra-Orthodox Jews, and we'll come on to Palestinians, in terms of conscription? Boaz, you're leading a campaign. Tell me what your campaign is.
Well, there's a law. In Israel, there's a draft. We all go, and when we turn 18, we all go.
Join
and
the
we
military.
Serve the country. We join the military.
And why don't the ultra-Orthodox
And unfortunately, there are two sectors, mainly the ultra-Orthodox, that for political reason, completely for political reason, just get released from doing anything, non-military service or civil service.
In a
for the
secular
country.
state.
Because of political reason. That for years, because of the political system in Israel, that every prime minister, no matter from which side, always needed the religious party to his coalition. That was also
And you want that
always the
exemption
price.
to go?
It got to a place where the Supreme Court of Israel said that we just cannot continue in this situation.
So who do you want to be conscripted who are not conscripted?
I want that every
And who are the
citizen,
exempt
and that
groups at the moment?
includes
Tell our
the religious ultra-Orthodox and also the Israeli Arabs. I believe that there must be one society here with equal rights and equal duties.
Shlomo.
I
Then
agree
Hanin.
completely with one thing, but the question is why a secular state, as the Israeli state, is so weak in face of this Orthodox. I think it's because it's difficult to define what is a Jew, a secular Jew in the Israeli state. It started before the religious Orthodox were very strong. In 47, Ben Gurion promised to the Orthodox, they were a very minority.
David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel.
Yeah. Ben Gurion promised them this right, without being a real electoral force in that time. The reason is the difficult to define what is a secular Jew. Secondly, I agree with you that everybody has the same duties and they have same rights in one condition. You cannot ask a young Arab person to be listed in the army in a state that is not
But
his
Hanin,
state. It's defined as it's not.
Absolutely.
I
I agree.
I'm for
But
it.
he can do civil service in hospitals.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
in
before,
some
so
conditions-
before I bring in Hanin, I just want to finish the Jewish part of this before I bring in the Palestinian part. And I want to ask Oded, he says it's very difficult to define a Jew. What's your take on the ultra-Orthodox exemptions? Is that acceptable? You're a settler who relies on the military to protect your settlements.
I don't support any exemption. I think that there needs to be a service for all the citizens, and I agree with Boaz that you have to have equal rights and equal duties. But at the end of the day, the way that they're handling the protest is going to be to bring into more division, into more arguments, instead of uniting the people.
What did you do, and what are you
What
doing
did I
now
do?
for
I
social
invited
justice?
Boaz. I
What do you
invited
do
Boaz
to change the
with his
situation?
protest camp to do a protest in the city, which I'm mayor of, because I believe that yes, we do need to make sure that everybody drafts himself into the army. But when I say
Israel.
No, but I'm not
It's
talking
not
about
in
that.
Israel.
I'm
You're
it's not in
talking-
Israel.
No.
Okay, so at least
Officially.
I invited them abroad. Khanin didn't
So,
invite them to
mayor of a
Israel.
flat, you are not living in Israel. It's a
I
fact.
heard that joke, Shlomo.
It's not a joke. It's a joke.
Unfortunately, your side of the argument is not recognized by the majority of the population in
But
Israel.
the majority of the world knows that you are not living in an Israeli state.
We're not going to resolve the occupation in this part 2 of this show. Okay, Hanin, he wants you to do citizen service. He wants the Palestinians to not be exempt from military service or at least civil service. The ultra-Orthodox are under pressure to join in. What is the Palestinian response to this demand?
When Boaz talk about the rights of the Palestinians, he talk with a very general slogan. When he talk about our duties, he has a concrete and specific
Boaz, I'll come back to you. Wait,
program
let her
of
finish.
duties. First of all, no, I don't own the state anything. The state owns a lot to me. The creation and the establishment of the state was on my expense. All the cities and the towns which Boaz and Steph and others are living were built upon Palestinian land.
She says that I don't get anything from this state. He says I'm a foreigner, etc., etc. The Palestinians have their positions. So why should they then join in a state where they're saying they don't feel welcome?
Biggest tragedy is that she doesn't represent the young people my age that come to us and tell us we
Boaz, you represent them.
The polling,
They vote for you or
the polling shows that
they voted for me,
the same
not for
thing
you.
that happens in the ultra-Orthodox happens in the Arab Israeli society. The politicians go to the extreme.
I will come back. Hanin, let him finish.
The politicians go to the extreme side, and the people
before I bring Hanin back in, let me
want
just
to be
clarify.
part of this
You're saying the
society.
majority of young Palestinians in Israel would like to perform some form of national
Civil
civic service.
service.
That's your belief.
Absolutely.
And you?
According
Absolutely.
to the polls. When you are talking about civic service, you are talking about a normal relation between a state and a citizen.
that's the way to
we
create a
don't
normal
have
relation.
normal relation.
So let's do it.
again,
Let's create one.
a Jewish state to a Palestinian citizen is not a normal relation. The state and my solution is to have a democratic, full democratic state. And the one meaningful full democracy is a state for all of its citizens. Like Britain is a state for all citizens, France is a state for all of citizens. Israel must be a state for all of its citizens. So a Jewish state is a racist state,
Do you agree with that?
But everybody deserves to have a home here. And this place needs to promise.
There is a state for all citizens.
She is not. You answer. Thank you very much. If you support the Jewish state, for me, you are not recognizing my national rights.
Do you recognize my rights?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, of course.
What are my rights?
Inside, this is the difference between me and you.
As a Jewish
This is the
state?
one difference between me and you.
But this is
I
not-
am pro an equal rights. You want a Jewish
I'm
state.
pro-equal rights. I'm recognizing the situation today.
Let me- I wanna-
You're
we're running out of time, so I need to move the discussion on. Let her finish her point, Hanin. Let her finish her point, and then we're moving on.
I think, you know what? And that's the idea. My grandparents, when they came here, they had a dream. And that dream wasn't to take your home.
But this is what they did. But this is what they did. This is what they did.
I need to move the discussion on. Ronen, why does the Prime Minister of this country say that African migrants are a national security threat?
Because of the same thing that we started for the discussion again and again.
Because you're worried about the Jewish majority.
Because since Jewish majority, this is the only thing that distinguish or identified Israel as a Jewish state, as a Jewish majority. When you bring here...
I don't think anyone brings them, they're refugees. You don't normally bring yourselves.
But let's talk facts. They're not
Yes.
refugees. By the international, they are not refugees. They have maybe dozens of them. They are refugees out of about 100,000 people. So they're not
Everywhere
refugees.
else in Europe, Eritreans, who I believe are a big bulk of the people who come here, get a right to stay, a right to asylum. In Israel, they don't. Why is that?
Well, first of all, you're wrong.
And they're called rapists and criminals.
First of all, you're wrong. You're wrong.
They're not called rapists and criminals.
No,
the Interior Minister
they are
didn't call them
Eritrean,
rapists
they
and
are
criminals.
Eritrean, not them. The Eritrean are allowed to stay here by law. But the question is, since it's a question of a demographic issue, and when we won't have here a Jewish majority, we won't be anymore a Jewish state. And since this is the idea of the state of Israel, to be a Jewish and democratic state, then we have created here a situation which is dangerous to our demographic issue.
Let me ask, it goes beyond demography. Your Interior Minister said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that African migrants don't realize that Israel, quote, belongs to us, the white man.
I don't know this quote, and if he said this quote, he's stupid, okay? Because we, for example, Israel, we had two major operations bringing black people from Africa to Israel.
But only because they're Jewish.
Definitely because they're
But if
Jewish,
you're a
because
black
these are
Christian
Jews.
or a black Muslim, you're not welcome in Israel.
Yeah, of course.
you are welcome as someone who want to visit here, but you're not welcome
To live
as a citizen.
or to take refuge.
never
A
can
country that was built on refugees is not welcoming refugees.
It's about.
It doesn't
you
look
can-
good to the rest of
no,
the world.
But listen to me. It's a question of percentage. Okay, Israel by its size, it's second in the world getting refugees. Okay, we're only 7 million people and we have 100,000
So you can
refugees.
expel
So
Palestinians.
I didn't
Hold on,
talk
let
about
him finish.
Palestinians.
He hasn't
I
finished.
didn't talk about
Haneen,
Palestinians.
Haneen, wait a
I'm
second.
talking about Sudan, not about Palestinians. So in matter of when you compare a percentage, we have more refugees than most of the countries around the world, including
Okay.
Great Britain. So and we do accept them and we do love them, but we can't get all Africa here. Okay, that we will collapse.
60,000 Africans are not all of Africa.
Yeah, but if we won't stop it,
30,000,
if we won't, it's 100,000, and if we won't stop it, we can't get them all.
Stav, are you uncomfortable with the rhetoric that is coming out of the government, out of politicians, about these newcomers in Israeli society, whether refugees or migrants?
It's a horrible.
Sorry.
Ashamed.
You're ashamed by it.
Yeah, but I want to say one thing. Israel has a refugee politics. 20 years ago, Israel accepted 1 million of Russians that supposed to be Jews without a lot of difficulties. Israel cannot accept 30,000 Africans, black Africans to this country because she's afraid that they will become much more non-Jewish in this country. To understand what is the Israeli Jewish state, we have to understand the attitude to the non-Jews, refugees, Palestinians, citizens and others. Very important. Israel has a refugee politics. She accepts automatically every Jew that he come from Paris, London, New York. Even he doesn't stop to be American citizens. If he doesn't accept to be a French citizen, she accepts him as a full citizen of Israel. This is the Jewish state. It's shame for the Israeli Jewish state to have this politics.
It's shameful to have these politics. Oded, do you agree with Shlomo?
Shlomo is denying the fact that many nations around the world have seen what refugees do to their country and how they've stopped immigration. The United States, the biggest democracy in the world, has borders where they don't allow foreigners to come in just because they're foreigners.
But when the foreigners come in, they don't
foolish
refer to them as rapists and criminals and threats to national security.
First of all,
That's not happening?
You have
The Prime Minister referred to African migrants as a threat to national security. That's fine by you?
No, but because you know why? Because part of them are part of Al Qaeda. So come on, yeah. When you have people who are coming, who are connected to Al Qaeda, then it's becoming
60,000 Eritreans are Al Qaeda.
No, some of them, but you have only
What are
5
you
of them.
talking about? Come on.
the pace in which they're coming.
He said about national security. So if
No.
I
He
understand,
didn't say Al Qaeda, he
if
said
I
African
understand the
migrants.
Prime
One
Minister,
explanation
he's talking about
to this
those
rhetoric,
people.
and I think there's only one explanation to this
Okay.
rhetoric. It's again this rhetoric of fear.
To have more about fear, to Israel's internal unity. There's a population who live here, Jews and Palestinians, secular and ultra-Orthodox. What is the biggest threat?
We haven't discussed this issue at all, but our biggest problem are people like Shlomo Zand, Jewish people who get money, not Shlomo Zand specifically, but Jewish people who get money from outside of Israel in order to destroy Israel, in order to make Israel look like an apartheid state.
But you are apartheid state.
So I
We'll
disagree
come
with
around
you.
the table.
This
Hold
is
on.
exactly a disagreement, and I think our biggest threats is people who are getting money from outside governments and outside
Left-wing
NGOs.
people, you think?
Extreme left people who doesn't accept the idea or the UN idea of a Jewish state and are doing anything in their power in order to destroy Israel as a Jewish and democratic state.
The most
Shlomo.
threat of the existence of the Israeli state that I worried is the continuity of the occupation of the occupied territory. Firstly, in the fact that our policy become more and more Jewish racist policy in the Israeli state. These two factors will not let Israel to continue to live in long time in the Middle East.
Boaz.
I think that the political system in Israel, I think that the key for why all this happening is because of the political system in Israel. That leads to a situation where extremists lead the agenda instead of the mainstream, the majority of Israelis, Jews, Arabs, religious, secular, that want a better country. The solutions are there at the social issues, at the two-state solutions issue, on everything. It all starts from the political system that led the extremists the power instead of the mainstream.
Staff.
The biggest risk. People are afraid of change. There are solutions. It's possible. There are many ways of getting there, economically, politically, socially, many, many ways. And the only problem is that some people don't want them. Some people want the system to maintain itself exactly the way it is. And that's our biggest problem, because we can be different and we can create a better future here. It's possible. You just have to want it and to do it together.
Oded? I was going to say that there's no big threat. I was going to say that after 65 years of independence, Israel has managed to establish a stable state, a strong state, a stable financial state, a strong military that can protect the country.
A nuclear state.
I think, but if to be more practical, one of the problems that Israel is facing as a democracy, which I think we can see happening around the world, is where people take advantage of democracy and under the name of democracy call for changes where they are not responsible enough afterwards to take the country in which they're calling for a change to actually lead it to a change. It's very easy to create a revolution. It's very easy to become very attractive and call the crowds to come and follow you. Afterwards, you have to prove yourself. We've seen what's happening around the world in the Arab countries. We're seeing what's happening in democratic countries which are collapsing financially. And at the end of the day, the democratic system has its faults. It's not ultimate. It's not absolutely clear of any problems. But at the end of the day, throughout the years, we've had governments which were responsible enough to take the people into a better future. And the fact today that we're sitting in a coffee shop, not being blown up, and having coffee and having this discussion with people sitting around peacefully has proven that this country has gone much forward in the last 65 years than the fact that Sivan thinks that there's no hope here.
Okay,
Stuff.
Hanin.
The risk that there is no big challenges toward the Israeli policies. Israel acts a superpower in the region. It is a superpower. Nothing challenges its policies. Israel doesn't pay the price of occupation. Israel doesn't pay the price of the racism. The Netanyahu government and the right wing is increasing inside Israel. The social protest proves that it is just a social protest. It doesn't want to change the main political and security policies inside Israel. The social protests say, yes, we agree to the right-wing political and security policies inside Israel, and this is what really is challenging.
That's all we have time for on this edition of The Cafe. I hope it's been an interesting evening for you all. It has been for me. I will be in Ramallah next week for the next edition of The Cafe. Join me then.